After this 3.5 hours of very dense and very comprehensive presentation of crystallized knowledge and sharing of experiences, I have a feeling that all of us are overcharged, and there is no need for any incremental charging. In any case, I had a very impossible task of taking the plastic charge from George and Ashok and hand it over to the yatris by way of making a few observations at the end of this inaugural session, which I must have been very extremely useful for my own learning. I must say that I come from around this region of Bundelkhand, but my real exposure to this region has been by way of looking at the secondary data. And I'm not really familiar with the field the way the team members are. Therefore, my taking the role of a commandant and saying, yatris, please charge without knowing the field or the landmines that lie in the field would certainly be like Don Quixote. So what I will do in 5 to 7 minutes, if I have, before I hand over this papers to the yatris, I would like to look at some of the issues that came up in the panel discussion, and also some of the issues that are coming from the national level planning documents, like the 11th Five-Year Plan. There's a significant chapter on environmental climate change, and also the National Action Plan for Climate Change. These issues, if we want to take them to the grassroots level, how do you really translate them? What are their implications? The strategies of low carbon solution and the climate resilient development strategy, how do they actually get translated at the grassroots level in terms of concrete programs and schemes? I think that is going to be the major challenge for the yatris. I just thought that I would pick up 3 or 4 issues for your consideration. As I understand from the presentation and also from the secondary literature and the policy documents, I must say frankly that there is no consensus as far as the impact of climate change is concerned in the short term or the medium term. In the long term, there is a general agreement. But in the next 20, 30 years, I have seen many studies which show that overall rainfall may come down and the impact on productivity of rice would be minus 3%, wheat production might go down in large part of India by 2 to 3%. But on the other hand, there are studies that to say that maybe in the medium term, the next 20 years, that impact may not be seen. But one point on which there is consensus is that there is significant regional vulnerability. Because of the increase in the frequency of extreme events, the backward and more vulnerable regions like Bundelkhand are going to be certainly at the extreme end of suffering. And that's why I'm really excited about this project. And this is a region which has got the national level attention. There's a national committee which has been set up under the chairpersonship of the Deputy Chairman of the Planning Commission. And I think this will be a case study. The relatively vulnerable, backward regions which have been at the receiving end. There are serious environmental issues in this region. How that can go in for adaptation or mitigation strategies, that is something that I think the yatris will have to inquire, ask, and come back and perhaps talk to us. The second issue that strikes me as extremely important, if you look at the national level plan documents, although they talk about agricultural vulnerability of the rural livelihood, but nonetheless, much of the solutions are recommended in terms of transport sector. I think this was mentioned by the panelists, the urban design, housing structure, how to clean up the sewages that are coming from the major cities through the river action plans. They are basically linked with the larger cities, Ganga action plan. In fact, 17% of the total energy consumption is in agriculture, 83% is on non-agricultural sector, large part would be in the major metropolitan cities. And I think the point that Ashok was mentioned, that the problem of affluenza and poverty type, is not only at the national level, even within the region of Bundelkhand, there are large class 1 cities, there is absolute pockets of depression and poverty and hunger. So, in order to really minimize the impact of climate change, I think one need not only concentrate on the agriculture or the primary sector. There has to be policy level mobilization at the state level. Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh, I'm talking about Bundelkhand per se, and also at the national level. The third point that strikes me is that the focus need not be only on increasing the production and productivity of the people living in the region. Because we know that in the past 20 years, the extra emphasis on forestry sector, logging, and a lot of chemicals and pesticides being put into agriculture in this region. I'm not talking about northwest India, I'm talking about Bundelkhand region has created serious problems of sustainability. And I think it's very important to ask, not that how do we increase production, but who is going to benefit from this production? What are the areas where production is very low and that need to be encouraged? What are the institutional factors? How is the land distribution? What is the power structure? How are interventions to mitigate or for adaptation strategies would really affect these vulnerable sections? These distributional issues will have to be kept in our mind. Otherwise, these adaptation strategies may not really help the sections that are really looking forward to that. The last 2 points that I would like to mention. One is, if you look at the planned document, you find there's a lot of discussion on displacement, exodus from the rural areas. And this region, because the per capita income, I just did a rough calculation back of the envelope, would be something like 18,000 rupees in the current prices, which is, compared to the national level per capita income, which is about 32,000, it's about half of that. You look at the productivity, labor productivity, 80% of the districts belonging to this region, Bundelkhand, from Madhya Pradesh and Uttar Pradesh, labor productivity has declined. Infant mortality rate and maternal mortality rate is 40% higher. And as a result, migration rate from rural areas to urban areas is 3 times more in this region compared to the rest of the country. I'm taking Bundelkhand as an example of a region which will be at the receiving end of the climate change. I think we need to do something about creating livelihood opportunities outside agriculture also. The issue of food security is not just to produce food, but to give adequate purchasing power in the hands of the marginalized sections of the population. You will have to create livelihood opportunities within the rural economy by diversifying agriculture and also by creating alternative employment opportunities. The last point I would like to mention for your consideration, the consideration of the yatris. If you take the national level projection of total workforce, we have about 490 million workers, which is by 2050 will become double. Now we have another 490 million people entering the labor force. Where will they go? Agriculture, with the present level of labor productivity going down in large part of the country, and climate change playing havoc in many of the backward areas. At the moment it absorbs about 220 million. It cannot really take, perhaps with some adaptation strategies, 10 million more. We have 490 million incremental labor force. They have to be absorbed outside agriculture. We have to create a large number of small and medium towns, specifically in the backward regions. And that is a major challenge. Are we making investments in small and medium towns, in the infrastructure? In fact, what I did quickly, so I prepared a map of this region and looked at the small and medium towns. I find in the last 2 decades, their growth rate have gone down. There has been declassification of the small and medium towns. I think that's a major issue. We have to make investment in the infrastructure to create a large number of small and medium towns and create livelihood opportunities outside agriculture. Well, I understand there are possibilities within the rural economy, but I think their possibilities have a limit. If you want to really deal with the problems of climatic change, its adverse impact in some of the backward areas. Bundelkhand being one of the important case studies. We will have to think of diversifying the employment structure and also creating large number of urban settlements which can take workforce out of agriculture and provide them adequate purchasing power to take care of the problems of food insecurity. I thought, since I have been in a way an insider and outsider to development alternatives, I thought I would just share my thoughts for your consideration. Thank you very much.